Good evening and welcome to Inderes Life Science Night. My name is Antti Siltanen. I'm an equity analyst focused on life science companies. I will start the evening with a short introduction to investing in life science stocks, and after that we have three excellent presentations by Orion Pharma, Herantis Pharma and Aiforia. Each presentation is followed by a Q&A session, so please send your questions via the chat function and we'll forward those to the company representatives. So first a few words about the life science stocks in Finland. There's about a dozen companies that can be regarded as life science companies. There are some pharmaceutical companies like Orion Pharma being one of tonight's presenters, and that's a more mature pharma company. And then we have earlier stage drug development companies, and of those, Herantis Pharma is presenting today. Then we have several health technology or medtech companies, and today we have a pleasure to hear from Aiforia Technologies, a digital pathology company. Looking at all the stocks in the Helsinki Stock Exchange, the company profile is that of early stage small cap companies. So Orion Pharma is clearly the biggest companies of nearly 2 billion in revenues and more than 8 billion in market cap. Then we have a few companies with revenues of approximately 100 million, but most companies are small with revenues of from few million to about 20 million euros. The characteristics of these companies are that they are typically commercializing innovations that are stemming from the academia. So new innovations that are bringing safer and more effective treatments to the markets. The market is very strongly regulated by government authorities. This means that the companies have a high burden to prove safety and efficacy of the new treatments and drugs they're bringing to market. This also leads to long timelines for bringing the products to markets. The market is essentially global, and the US is the largest market. So the prices and size of the market in the USA is clearly the biggest. So most companies are primarily commercializing in the US and followed by Europe and Japan and other areas. From a profile perspective, the early stage companies typically have high potential, but they are very risky and unprofitable, and the mature companies are defensive and highly profitable. So in the next slide, I have a little bit more on that. So the graph at the bottom depicts a typical development of revenues over time for life science companies. In the early R&D stage, the companies don't yet have revenues, and the value creation is not really based on current cash flows, but rather reaching value inflection points. So these can be, for example, gaining clinical data on the safety and efficacy of the product, or, for example, receiving an FDA approval to bring the product to market. From a valuation perspective, these stocks are usually narrative-driven, and it's difficult to give fundamental-based valuations to the companies. Cash flows at this stage are of course very negative, and the main risk is proving the concept of the treatment or product in the first place. Then in the early commercial phase, revenues are typically small, and if everything is going well, the revenues are growing very rapidly. At that point, the value creation is very much based on the rate of growth, and valuation can be done by revenue-based multiples, such as EV to sales. Cash flows are still very negative, maybe even more negative compared to the earlier phase, because the bringing products to market requires further investments. And here the key point is to prove the scalability of the business. When we are going to higher revenue levels, the main driver is still high growth and in improving profitability. And for those companies that are turning profitable, valuation is by PE or other earnings multiples, but also revenue-based multiples are relevant here. Cash flows are improving quickly and turning positive, and the key risk is whether the company can maintain growth at scale. And then at mature stage, growth is getting slower, even turning negative. The business are very defensive and profitability is very high. And at this stage, the valuation by earnings multiples is a natural way to go. Cash flows are very, very positive, and the key risk is defending the market against new innovations. So the market, as mentioned, is global and very defensive, and it's supported by strong trends. One of the key trends is aging population. So basically, in developed countries, the elderly population is getting larger, requiring more services to maintain and improve health. There's a constant need of new innovations. There's, in many areas, a big unmet medical need for more safe, more effective treatments and solutions. Also, most developed countries are running on budget deficits, so this means that there's an demand for cost saving and value-adding solutions. And I think we have examples of such solutions today in today's presentations. So the overall growth rate in both pharma side and medical technology is roughly 15%, and it's very predictable. So what does a strong life science company look like? First, it has a value-adding product with market authorization and a strong IPR. Ideally, it's first to market, or it has strong advantages in terms of efficacy, safety, or cost savings. So from today's presentations, Herantis is aiming to be the first to market in their category in Parkinson's disease. And Orion Pharma, I think, is a good example with their leading product Nubeqa. It's not first in class, but it's the best in class and achieving nice results. For an early stage company, it's essential to secure funding, and this is kind of one of the most important points of the business model to enable timely development and getting to market. And even with a great product, companies still need excellent sales and marketing capabilities, and to present a lot of convincing clinical data to convince the users of their solution. A few words on the funding environment. Overall, we need to go back to the previous decade with a very long period of very low interest rates that was increasing liquidity and increasing funding for life science companies. And this culminated in the 2020 and 2021 into when the liquidity boost during the COVID pandemic really resulted in a boom in the market. And this reflects, for example, in the number of IPOs, which in the biotech sector were very, very active during those years. This reversed with the increasing inflation and higher interest rates. And for example, the IPOs and general funding went down since 2022. But we have seen some good signs during this year. So looking at the XBI Biotech Stock Index, this has been sharply appreciating since the Liberation Day in April. And since last summer, the biotech funding seems to have picked up very, very rapidly. So especially in the US, we are seeing a lot of M&As, licensing deals, and the outlook is looking much better than 1 year ago. Also, based on discussions I've had with industry representatives, it seems that there are some positive signs in Europe as well, and picking up of interest from the players. Then looking at evaluating the companies, when we are thinking about more more mature companies, we can rely on earnings multiples such as P or EV to EBIT. And valuating those companies is quite straightforward. Then when we are talking about earlier stage companies, we need to rely on present value of future cash flows, so DCF models basically, and when companies are generating revenue, we can look at the revenue-based multiples. But basically for earlier stage companies, the valuation by definition is inaccurate, and this results in kind of a natural high uncertainty that the investors must expect or approve when investing in earlier stage companies. And of course, we can also always look at sector peers to look at relative valuations. The EVS multiples for the Helsinki Stock Exchange companies is roughly 5 at the moment. It means that the market is putting expectations for growth. So those companies that can achieve high growth will probably see very good price appreciation. But if there's lacking growth, the high valuations or relatively high valuations mean that there's also downside for those companies. So kind of to summarize the investment profile for life science investments. The markets are global and defensive. That's a big opportunity for many companies. The R&D that is done over years, regulatory approvals achieved, and market shares won create moats for companies, and these enable high profitability of mature stage companies. And often the capital requirements are also quite low for these companies, and they are able to generate a lot of free cash flow. Many earlier stage companies are very potential as M&A targets, and they also have potential for lucrative licensing agreements. And for those companies that have a strong product, they have a possibility for long-term profitable growth and high customer stickiness. Then on the weakness side, there's binary R&D risk, which can lead to kind of rapid negative situations if, for example, a drug is not proven efficient or safe enough. Market authorization can take time and be expensive processes, and also, as mentioned, upfront funding is needed for companies, possibly for many years. The markets are quite conservative, so going to market may take quite a lot of time, and there's always competition from new innovations. So as a final point, I'd like to take a quick look at the industry trends going forward. In the biopharma side, the new drugs and the M&As and licensing deals are often directed to bispecifics, trispecific antibodies, antibody-drug conjugates, and also platforms that enable generating multiple new drugs. Also, cell and gene therapies are clearly picking up. CAR-T therapies have made a breakthrough, and probably gene editing solutions are a thing of the future. Artificial intelligence is breaking through in medtech and drug discovery. We'll hear more from Aiforia and maybe other companies on this as well. Personalized medicine has been a trend for a long time, and that will continue to be a major trend. Both medtech and pharma companies are looking for biomarkers to improve their solutions, making solutions more personalized and effective by selecting the best patient groups. And also digital health and therapeutics is getting stronger all the time. So I'd like to thank you on my behalf, and next we'll continue with the first presentation from Orion Pharma.